butterflies, welcome to my comic verse. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I'll be talking about the New Mutants movie. For anyone wondering if the comics reflect the movie, based on the trailer, there's a few themes that are similar, but overall it's entirely its own storyline. At the most, it seems like a possible aftermath of what's happening in the comics. But I actually wanted to take a moment to do, and it doesn't seem like I'll be watching the actual movie anytime soon. So the main theme that's common here is the battle between light and dark. And I get into details explaining this duality in the Wolverine analysis, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. But what caught my attention is that this battle is between two bears. So in the intro, they said, there's an old Native American proverb that says, inside every person there are two bears, forever locked in combat for your soul. One bear is all things good, compassion, love, trust. The other is all things evil, fear, shame, and self-destruction. I'm not familiar with the Native American proverbs, but I'm a little familiar with the Egyptian occult knowledge, so I wanted to reiterate a story that you may or may not have heard of, because I feel like it directly reflects the New Mutants movie. This is the battle between Heru and Seth. Heru representing the good and Seth representing the bad. So Heru is also known as Horus, and Seth is associated with the bear constellation. And during their final battle in the story, they both turn into bears. I love this story because it illustrates the battle between light and dark, which is why I'm just going to make it a topic on its own and probably use it as a reference point for other videos. So let me start off by saying that these gods are an externalized reflection of an aspect that we all face. Anytime I talk about Heru, that's automatically tied with the concept of good and light. Anytime it's about Set, that's tied with evil and darkness. Spoiler alert, they're both one and the same person, so this is the battle of duality coming into unity within self. Set's energy is the focus of this movie, which is fears being used against them. Set becomes the opposing force, but he has the ability to be the supportive force. It's just human nature that we all go through this inner battle of the bears before we can truly see that sometimes. So Heru rules Upper Egypt. He's the sun, he's light, he's daytime, so he's the part of us that we display ever so proudly. Set rules the desert of Lower Egypt. He's the night, the darkness, and he's the part of us that we tend to shame and hide from ourselves and hide from others. And that's where the divide and the battle begins. Seth was actually called upon as a friend in the underworld. The underworld is a metaphor for a place where our fears are stored and internalized, whether it's conscious, subconscious, or unconscious. The ultimate battle is always with the self. And if you do believe in an afterlife, it was said that facing our underworld in our conscious waking life is what prepared us for the afterlife. Because even there, the ultimate battle is the reflection of our own fears and how light or heavy our heart is. In later dynasties, he became an outcast, he became detested and exiled by the Egyptians. Even animals that resembled him were despised. In other ceremonies, desert animals under his rulership, such as antelopes and gazelles, were ritually sacrificed in the search for the eye of Heru, which is the Sirius fire imprisoned in the flesh. So Sirius is a star. It's known as the sun beyond the sun, and it's actually directly linked with Set as well, because he's just as much of spirit as Heru. So this illustrates the sacrifice, the death of all the adjectives that are associated with darkness that we don't want anything to do with, because we're so focused on praising our light qualities while demonizing the dark. You see how people are willing to sacrifice Set's energy in order to go looking for the light energy. So, darkness has no issues being dark, but we are taught to fear it, to run from it, to demonize, to shame, and all those bad emotions that they mentioned in the New Mutants intro, right? And that's when Set gets suppressed. And Set being the moon energy, the subconscious, the night, he's like, hey, it's not fair that I have to be the bad guy here. Why can't I experience life with you? The more we suppress, the more we burden our inner Sets, because it just falls back into that subconscious automatically. So now the battle of the subconscious trying to sabotage us begins without us even realizing. If you ever find yourself asking yourself, why do I always attract this type of person? Or how do I always end up in this type of situation? Then that's most likely your subconscious trying to reflect what you're rejecting within. This doesn't mean that if you always attract assholes, then deep down you're an asshole too, okay? If it were that easy to decipher, then we wouldn't need to do all this internal work in order to see our true reflections without the ego getting in the way. So Set is the principle of fixation. Heru may be the fire in the flesh, but Set is the one who binds the living fire into matter. So what does this mean? Like I said, the Wolverine analysis would be helpful here, but the element of fire is used to represent spirit. Like imagine yourself to be a little energy ball, a sperm even. But without a fixed form, then there would be no Heru to be expressed at all. Even if you look at it through our chakra system, the higher we go in our chakras, the more we connect with spirit. And the lower we go, the more we connect with grounding energy, rooting, the earth, and the physical matter. And it's the same concept with the emotional scale. As a human, we're made up of both, right? Whether you stay high or stay low, it's essential to experience and learn how to balance both. We can't be all shadow work and darkness, but we can't be light and love all day either. It's just not realistic. So Set's tail was worn by the pharaoh to reenact an ancient ritual in which earth energies were drawn up through the tail and assimilated through the body for physical and magical rejuvenation. Basically, they rejected him, they told him he ain't shit, they suppressed him, but they still acknowledged that his fixed earth energy is necessary for rejuvenation. So they're still calling on his energy, but just when it's convenient for them. I spoke about this in my Hulk analysis as well, actually, because the Hulk says the same thing in Avengers. He comes out just to tell Banner, fuck you. You only call on me to do your dirty work, but you don't want to show me love and acknowledge me otherwise? No. Call me when I can experience everything with you and not just the terrible crap, because I'm sick of it. So it's like, hey, I hate you. I don't want to deal with any of these lower emotions that you come with. You're really annoying. So just go over there and wait until I need your ass to help me feel grounded, okay? So Set rules the barren lands of the scorching deserts, which is devoid of life. The reason why Set becomes this evil schemer is because of the direct opposition that he faces of the fertile lands of the north, and the generative power of his brother Asar, or Osiris. He's cool with the barren desert land, but because he's constantly demonized, and on top of that, his wife is also barren with him, but she conceives a child with Asar, so he's like, screw all of this. So, for the living fire to be liberated from its terrestrial prison, the inertia and fixation of Set first has to be overcome and dispersed. This means that in order for us to recognize and connect with our spirit in its purest form, we have to first overcome the battle of opposing dualities and of darkness, which is Set. He's unchanged and fixed, which means he's not going anywhere. To recap a little, Set's the opposition to the light and life-giving rays of the sun, which didn't make him bad, it just meant that he's the dark, the night, the moon that moves the ocean, meaning the subconscious that rules our emotions. When we ignore that moon, listen, I don't know if you've heard, but the moon is sensitive, okay? So that's why he's continually scheming against the ordered flow of nature because of the abandonment that he faces. From the earliest times, Heru and Set were regarded as twin gods and as equals in every respect, with their attributes exactly opposite in every way. Heru personified life and Set of death. Set also tricks and murders his brother Asar, which is Heru's father. So Heru then battles Set to avenge his father, and this lasts 3 days. At first they fight as men, and then in the form of bears. So Heru wins, but Aset, his mother, wouldn't allow the death of Set because she, the divine feminine, acknowledges that Set is vital to the plan of creation, just as her own child Heru, just as vital as her sister Neptet, also known as Nephthys. So Neptet is the personification of darkness and death within Set, which is why she's able to resonate with Set and the necessity of his existence. So it's not about the victory that Heru has, but actually about the power of the divine feminine stepping in to remind us of love and compassion. And that's another missing puzzle piece, because without the connection to our heart space, to our divine feminine, both men and women, we end up becoming imbalanced and the battle of the mind and ego takes place. Remember that these are all characters of aspects of ourselves. The entire time we're battling, we're looking through the eye of Heru, the sun, the ego. We're fighting for our solar plexus, our power. And the reason why we're unable to see the other side, why we're so blind to the fact that Set is a necessary and natural opposition, just as the sun naturally casts a shadow, it's because we're seeing through one perception. We're seeing through one eye. We're not able to see that the opposing force is just our other eye trying to be seen. The eye of Heru has two eyes, but it's the eye of the sun that gets the most attention. The other eye is the eye of the moon, shining with the reflected light of the sun. The fact that the eye of the moon reflects the light of the sun goes to show that it's our conscious ego that's being directly reflected in our subconscious emotions. So when we don't stop to look at the mirror and reflect, to recognize and acknowledge that moon, that set, that shadow work, that's how we continuously move blindly, battling our own subconscious, whether it's internal or a direct externalized situation. So Heru finally learns that it's not about killing Set, but about keeping him under control. So in real life, this means giving just as much love and compassion as we do to our light qualities, to our dark qualities. Because of course, it's easy to love the parts of us that we want to display and that we want to boast about, right? The test is when we can show compassion, forgive ourselves, and learn from whatever that we want to suppress or avoid. The only form of control is maintaining balance, okay? Anything that we have to force to control is most likely going to teach us how to let go. So, the New Mutants movie is based off their own fears, but I do want to add in for anyone wondering about a real life set in your life, we cannot control or change others. We can only control our own actions and our own reactions. Understanding these dualities within ourselves helps us empathize with others more. And when we boil it down to why someone is so hateful, vengeful, ignorant, trolling, whatever it is, it's always going to lead back to the lack of love and the yearning for love. However, I want to clarify that just because we show compassion and forgiveness, it doesn't mean that we make excuses and that they don't have to take accountability. We're all on different points of our journey, and some people are just not meant to travel the same roads at the same time. It's not our job to force anyone to do anything. And it also doesn't mean that we have to let them slide, okay? If we're gifted enough to have the perception of both eyes on 2020 vision, we're able to see why they're blinded and why it's not necessary for us to argue and engage. And that's why it's so important to be self aware, because it's easy to also use that as an excuse and just say that you're in the right all the time when you're not, okay? So, awareness is key in all situations. So that's the story of Heru and Set, light and dark, good and evil, life and death. So I hope you guys enjoyed that story breakdown. All right, butterflies, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I'll see you next time. Stay flying free. Bye.